What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Sovereign Mindset. I'm your host, Mike Ruiz, and today I got on John Bros. John, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here. Good to
All
finally
right,
be here. Very exciting.
all right, cool. John, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got to where you're at today in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Martin County, Florida, Stuart, Florida, and went off to school like everybody does. Went to college, got a degree in social science education, and was fortunate enough to do a little traveling. Before I was out of that, I went and backpacked Europe a bit, and that, kind of gave me a little bit of interest in exploring perhaps a bit further. I later started a graduate degree that I really did not end up enjoying very much. So I dropped it, worked in Orlando a little bit longer, shout out UCF Knights, and eventually moved to Thailand to teach English. And when I was teaching in Thailand, I was out there for about 11 and a half months, and it helped me grow in certain areas that I didn't know were necessarily possible, or at least I wouldn't be aware of them until later upon reflection, sometimes years later to learn those things. But when I finished up out there, I moved back to Florida, started a teaching job where I'm at today, full circle, ended up getting hired at a high school back in my hometown area. And I've been teaching 10th grade world history ever since. Um, about 4 years ago or so, I started to have a premise that I wanted to do something a little bit more. I love being an educator, public school educator. There's a lot of really great intrinsic rewards to it, but I wanted to take some of the messages and some of the tenets of wisdom, so to speak, that I share with my students. I wanted to try to get those out there a bit more. And upon many different directions, I ended up landing on the realization that I needed to write a book. And that's how the personal wellness principles kind of all came about. And so I started writing it about 3.5 years ago. Long process, but by August of this past 2020, I finally self-published, and yeah, it's quite the development, but happy to be at that point.
Cool, cool. So, teacher, then kind of feeling like, hey, I need to get my message out there a little bit more. Decided to write a book. What's that? So what's the motivation for writing the book in a way? Like
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, sorry, I mean interrupt you.
All good.
Um, uh, the best part of my work with my students, I always describe it to someone as like, I don't have an ego regarding my students' ability to remember Napoleon and his attempt to take over Europe, right? I don't have an ego about my students wanting to become history teachers or professors of history, or, reflecting on the Middle Ages with so much passion, right? I don't care about all that. I care that they learn. I care that they develop great habits, study habits, work habits, etc. But then past that point, the thing that I always get the most intrinsic reward from my experience with my students is getting them to buy into their own wellness, and buying into this idea that they do have an effect, their thoughts, their actions, what they do, what they don't do, that these things can really reach a point where they don't quite understand how much control they have. And I try to get them into that mindset rather, of take control and buy into this idea that you can be so much better, and that not that you're bad right now or that there's anything wrong with you, but that there's this idea that you can construct yourself and try to follow some guidelines and some tools to create a happier, more purpose-driven life that, has things like gratitude, and it has things like the ability to empathize with people and relate to people. Those small lessons, again, 95% of the time it's world history, but that 5% where I get to try my best to encourage them into these positive directions. The best way to describe it is I tell their parents at open house, my goal is to try to have your son or daughter feel like a happier, better versions of themselves by May than they did in August. And so from that, I was like, I need to create this into something that I can share with people of all ages, in an attempt, whether they're high school aged or in their 60s, in an attempt to encourage them to buy into that idea of, hey, maybe there's just a couple of small things that you haven't considered, and maybe if you do these things, you can create a happier situation for yourself.
Yeah, man. That's amazing. You don't come across many teachers like you often who go that far into depth as far as trying to make sure that these kids are having the tools and the skills, coming out with the tools and skills to become kind of the best version of themselves, and someone who actually cares beyond just, going to school and doing his job and then coming back home. At least that's what I've seen, and that's what I've witnessed.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I can imagine there's plenty of others, and I have a, I look at the system, and I just see so many problems with the way the system is and how it's constructed, and how it's set up in a way that, doesn't challenge these children enough so that they can come out with the confidence to become, like you said, just well balanced people who can navigate life, and then there's also a lot of things that I see with the school system where it's about drilling them down and removing their individuality, so they're just, you know part of the system. And that's my main beef with it. I don't want to go too much into that, but I guess my point is that I'm sure there's so many good teachers out there that are part of this system that doesn't allow it. So, I mean, I just commend you for actually going beyond that and writing this book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just one thing I'll note from what you just said, kind of the biggest concern for someone like myself, acknowledging what you just said, is, they can graduate with 4 years full of a lot of classes, a lot of difficult classes, some that are easier than others, some that are more difficult than others. But for 99 out of 100, when they get out, there's no class on emotional intelligence and there's no class on personal finance. And so when we're talking about, if my intention of waking up every morning, and all these other great teachers that there are, if our intentions is to try to do our very best to prepare them for adulthood and try to encourage them to be in the best position possible to take on the stresses of adulthood, then we have to introduce some of these other topics and areas of discussion that perhaps weren't as needed 30, 40 years ago, despite the fact that they should have been there in the curriculum. But it's necessary now more than ever to have people understand emotional intelligence, and to have these teenagers, they're being encouraged to play every character in the book other than themselves. They're being encouraged through something like, I'm going to sound like an old man, but through Instagram and TikTok and everything else, they're being encouraged to play this part, because just like all of us in our childhoods, whatever the phase is, we all play this part, but their version of it is so much more severe than any other group of kids that's ever existed. Teenagers, kids, elementary, middle, high school. And the fact of the matter is that they don't realize the toll that that's taking on them. This idea of them waking up in the morning and playing all of these different characters. I got my Snapchat character, my Insta character, my Twitter character, private Twitter character, TikTok, so on and so forth. And they don't recognize, or rather they haven't stopped to realize, like, you're the first group of kids ever who's got to wake up and worry about anything other than showing up to school, the way you're going to dress, and then the teasing and the goods and bads that'll come from, our attire at school. That's like one of the oldest things in public school lore, right? It's like, what people wear to school, right? Back to the Breakfast Club type of thing. But these kids have to, by choice and by society putting it on them, they end up worrying about everything other than their own true wellness. They're playing this myriad of games with apps and everything else, and they're not getting to be kids. And if they had something like emotional intelligence, if they had the ability to recognize the things that they should be grateful for, the things that they do have, not looking and wishing for the things that they don't have, but accepting what they do have, and learning some of those wellness tools, they would be in a much better position when they graduate than we're putting them in right now.
Yeah, that definitely seems like it's the case. So writing this book, like, from the moment that you decided to write the book to actually writing it, how long was that?
That was about 3.5 years. It was about 3.5 years. It was in the summer of 2017, and I published in the fall of 2020.
Okay. So it's something you thought about for a while, huh?
Yes, and something that went through its phases too. Like I experienced the doubt and the fear that everybody deals with when we try to take on something new. I was like, "You're not an author, you're a teacher." Not that the two can't coincide, but again, I was being harsh on myself. What business do you have writing on this? Those type of things. And then you try to get over those, and you successfully get over more. But you find when you reflect on it, that something that took this long a time very much should have taken a lot less, but you get yourself in the way of yourself. And so that was a fun learning experience. But the actual last year or so leading up to the publication date was spent working with my editor, and she and I got along very well, and she was incredibly helpful, and she really helped me take things to the next level. And I got to listen to this person objectively look at my work and criticize it and critique it and shape it, and I'm forever grateful for that. So it was basically a year of editing, and then by August published.
Cool. And so like the type of person then for this book, I would imagine, I read it, I'm thinking it's a younger person, maybe coming out of high school or maybe in high school, kind of learning how, learning some wisdom, to life.
Yeah. And again, this, because all these different characters I just mentioned dealing with these teenagers, the reality is there's people age 20 to 35 doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So on one end, you say, yeah, absolutely. It's a ninth grade reading level book. So what is ninth grade? 14, 15. So basically it's like, okay, absolutely. There's a ton in there that an open-minded high school teenage age student, if they bought into it, would absolutely benefit from. But then simultaneously you go, well, we're a whole generation of people that is kind of in this amnesia state of look at me and focusing on everything but truly trying to make themselves well. So is it for the high school age student? 100%, but it's also for your people in their 20s. It's for your people in your 30s. It's for people who want to try to understand that they themselves are the ones that are going to make the change. And that's really what I try to do with the book. I don't even like to use the phrase self-help, because that implies like I've got something that you don't, right? And that's not the case. That's not the case. My experiences and the things that I articulate in the book are what it took for me to learn these different things. But there's nothing new under the sun, right? So it's not that I have something that's never existed. I have something where I've tried to narrow it down and give people anecdotal evidence to go, hey, listen, here's a couple things that affected me in a certain way, and this was how I was able to grow from them and try to become that better version. So I really think it's for everybody from, your high school age student to somebody who's in their 20s or 30s and is just missing some things. And whether that's a passion in their job, whether that's purpose in their life and their dharma and all of those important things, or whether it's lack of ability to be grateful for what they have and lack of ability to listen to other people, really it's something for everybody.
Awesome, dude. So, let's talk about the book then. Like, what are then some of those principles which you think kind of are at the forefront of your mind that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would say overall the most important thing is the idea of developing proper perspective, because proper perspective can then trickle down into so many other topics within the book: your confidence, your ability to be grateful, your ability to empathize. Proper perspective is everything, because it's kind of step one of buying into this idea that your thoughts that shoot into your brain upon a reaction to something do not have to be your full response, right? It's this idea of, okay, assess what's going on, but be objective and trust that your objectivity to whatever that best version of what's on the other side of what someone's dealing with, to have to exercise that perspective. Mm-hmm. The idea is that the first step is for someone to buy into the idea that, okay, if I change my mindset, outcomes in this environment of mine will change. They're not going to change and look different for everybody else around me, but they're going to start to develop and look a different way for me, because I'm buying into this idea of taking responsibility for my thoughts. So a lot of people just want to take responsibility for their actions, but they don't recognize the fact that what they think, how they think, is simultaneously going to literally create the world around them. So developing proper perspective is very important, and I think kind of at the forefront message of the book.
Well, yeah. So when it comes to that, right, proper perspective, or it's one of those things where just knowing that you have the ability to be able to manipulate and shape your perspective, you have like that capability, is a big deal, because then you can start acquiring the tools, you can start acquiring the models, you can start practicing, changing your perspective. You can start noticing your triggers. And, you just become a lot more mindful and a lot more aware of yourself. and you can start making those changes necessary in order to develop an intuition, right? Because intuition goes so much into perspective. It's like, and there's so much that goes into building your intuition. It's past experiences, it's your emotions, and all of that stuff. So, you know, I just feel like once you know you have control of your perspective, and once you can start like working on, those tools that help you refine your perspective, and also start understanding other people's perspective as well, which is a big deal into shaping your perspective as well, right?
Right.
Like that's something huge, and it's something personally for me, like when we talk about, or when you're talking about, hey, this book is really like, it's written at a ninth grade level, it's, it's for the, but really, there's a whole generation of people that come out and they've never developed these skills. I'd be one of those people who had to develop these skills later on at life. And it is one of those foundational principles there, like developing a mindset, shaping your perspective, that just has so many ripple effects into other areas, and so
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, and yeah, I appreciated you including that there in the book.
Yeah, yeah, and the ripple effects you're talking about are 100% true. You know,
Mm,
when people buy, and I use the word buy in because you have to. It is a decision. It's like anything. You're basically choosing to have faith in the idea that your brain, through practice, can help create a happier environment, better environment, more productive, whatever word you want to use, just an
mm-hmm,
increase in your overall experience. If you buy into that premise that you do have control within your brain. And
mm-hmm,
so, like, once you start making that choice, once you choose to believe that, then it had then, well, okay, so now you believe it, but now you have to put it into practice. One of the examples I try to give my students, I'll show them maybe perhaps a TED talk dealing with perspective, and then we'll maybe discuss it a little bit. And I tell them, I said, think of it like this: imagine that you have all the right intention in the world to ask someone out that you've got a crush on, right? You're so nervous, you've been wondering forever, you've been waiting forever, got all this intention, and you ask the person, and they tell you no, right? And initially, you're crushed, you're disappointed, you feel terrible, and you choose, or subconscious, whether you recognize it or not, we choose to wallow in that moment and go, oh, boo-hoo, poor me, what's wrong with me, right? What did I do? What's not good enough about me? And what people aren't trained to do, and what I tell the kids, I said, you got to change your perspective. At that point, you're playing victim, but watch how quickly you can come on top. You go, that's that person's choice. I wish them the best. They weren't ready to take on all the great qualities that I have to give them.
mm-hmm,
That they might never find out. They'll never find out about it. But
mm-hmm.
I know that if my intention was right, and I really wanted to ask this person out, and they said no, it can sting, it can hurt. But the truth is you can also immediately go, but they didn't want to experience what I had to give them. They didn't want to even give it a chance. So I'm not going to be angry about it. I'm just going to recognize that person's going to miss out on all the great things that I have to give them. And in that moment, you go from the loser to the winner. You go from the victim to the triumphant one, so to speak. And you can take that little metaphor, that really, again, that's something that a kid in high school deals with, all the way to a person in the oldest points of their life, right? So it's like, by mastering that ability to just go, wait, let me switch this up on myself. Let me put myself in the winner's seat. Let me put myself at first place, at the top of the winner's circle, whatever it might be. By doing that, you're putting this faith in this idea that you can change your perspective. And with that, you can change your environment.
Yeah, yeah. um you know Basically, that's another kind of another principle in your, I didn't see it in your book, but something that I use is self-talk. I mean, it's basically saying, hey, let's take a second here. Maybe we can feel the emotional pain or joy, and then, but then let's rein it in, and let's take a second here, and let's talk, just let's talk this through, let's work this through. And that's basically what you're saying right there. It's like saying, hey, uh you know yeah, okay, it didn't work out the way it is. Bummer. But, she really missed out on a great opportunity to meet a great guy, because that's what I think about myself. And you can start talking that way to yourself. And it's just,
with all things.
Yeah. And that definitely permeates like all aspects of life. But so many people don't realize how they talk to themselves. And it's, if you've grown up and people have always talked very negative or very harsh, it's just something that subconsciously it's ingrained in us. And then we start talking to ourselves like that, and we start being really hard on ourselves, and we start really, and it's like, if you said what you're saying to yourself to someone else, you'd be an asshole, right?
Right.
So why are you talking like that to yourself? So that's another aspect to perspective, is self-talk that can really have a positive impact.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think the way I articulate in the book, I don't assign the term self-talk, but I think there's a part where dealing with pain and such, it's the idea of, and just how we explained it with that example, like the idea of you let something in and you acknowledge it. When you put it away, the motto of the past, the motto of the last 50 years, as people have gotten further and further and further away from themselves and gotten further and further and further away from their wellness, has been, no, just put it back, just put it back, just put it back, put it here, put it there, blame it on this, blame it on that. That ain't going to work. It doesn't work. So the idea is that you take it in, whether it's sadness, whether it's disappointment, whether it's anger, or whether it's just genuine disappointment, whatever it might be, you got to acknowledge the emotion. But then, like you're saying, you got to use that perspective and talk yourself through it to go, okay, I got to find the gratitude in this, or I got to find the empathy in this, or I have to find the happiness, the positive, exactly, the silver lining. You got to find this area in between to make yourself well again. And you got to believe that by doing that and making that choice, you will. And then once you do, you look back and, the rest is history. You're well again. You're feeling like yourself. A quick example, and I'll free you up, but, when I was in a really bad rut a couple of weeks ago, just not in the mind space of where I like to be at. Right. And it was on the weekend. I really did not want to work out, and I really did not want to go to the farm. Right. I knew I was laying in bed, just doing whatever on a Saturday morning, just feeling bad. Right. Poor me, mopey. And so I go, no, you gotta get up, go for the run. Right. The whole time I'm running, gritting my teeth, just, muttering to myself like I'm a 90-year-old, just muttering, hating it. As soon as I'm done, what you recognize, you go, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. On the way to the farm, going out there, doing the work. By the time I'm done, completely cured, right? Feeling completely myself again. Not because of anything other than the fact that I knew that if I commit these certain actions, if I go run and get my body working and get out in the sun and sweat, if I go to the farm, work with the plants, work with the earth, even if I'm not consciously realizing it, physiologically in my brain, there's a little checklist going on. And I go, exercise, sunlight, working with the earth. Perfect. There you go. And then you said, like I said, on the drive home or whatever it might be, you suddenly recognize your state that you're in. You go, oh my gosh, sure enough, I'm entirely better off right now than I was 3 hours ago, as I begrudgingly trudged through all this stuff.
Yeah, I think there's like the most simplest way, like that is in your control to affect your mood, right? Is exercise, food, and sleep, right? It's like you do those, you get those three in line, or you do one of those three, and like it's going to help you just change your mood completely. Like you said,
elevate you.
It's gonna elevate you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you have no choice in it either. That's the other cool thing. It's literally physiological. You can go read the studies on exercise and what that does for the brain. You can read the studies about the sun. And so it's like, even if you don't want to do it, you just accept that you will, because it's going to make you feel better. And believe it or not, that also plays a part in something like practicing your gratitudes. Right. That's something that I include in the book. This idea of, when you wake up, you have your 5 things, your 10 things, whatever it might be, that you're grateful for. And you don't just think them in your head. You say them out loud. You look at them, you acknowledge them, you bring them out. Right. And the idea is that nobody wants to do that right when they wake up. No one I don't want to. I'm waking up on 5 hours of sleep, getting ready to go teach for the day. I'm coming in the shower. I see my little board that says my grateful. I don't want to read those, but I do it because I know that it's helping me. I know because it constructively and objectively, not subjectively helping me, but objectively, it is doing the work as soon as I say it out loud. And maybe it's 2 hours later, maybe it's 20 hours later. But at some point in that day, when I'm faced with an adversity, my brain is going to help me put myself in perspective and go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But think about all those things you got to be grateful for. This is small potatoes over here. Don't stress it.
It's like there's now, I don't know how this is something I've just heard kind of in passing. I'm sure there's something to it though. It sounds like there's something to it, but just smiling, just the act of smiling, makes people happier, raises up their serotonin levels or something like that. Just the act of it. So it's kind of what you're saying. This is like going through the motions. You don't have a choice. The physiological response that occurs is what occurs. And so
Exactly.
yeah, that's cool. So what's another principle here in your book that you want to talk about?
I'd say certainly the idea of developing this purpose-driven life,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's so many people who have a real passion for something. Maybe it's cars, right? Maybe it's taking apart cars and putting them back together. For some people, it might be, they have a 9 to 5, but they really are just an absolute animal in the gym. And they've got a passion for physical fitness and that level of world that just is the most important thing to them. And so many people live with those passions, but don't make it and turn it into like that purpose-driven life. They don't take the chance because we're all conditioned to not want to take the chance. We're conditioned to fear the idea of diving into the unknown, especially if the unknown doesn't come with a salary and a this and a that, and health insurance. We're not encouraged to think that those are good. We're encouraged to be fearful of them. But the reality is that those things that people are so passionate about in their personal life, they've got to find a way to create it into their work life, right? They've got to find a way to turn those passions into that purpose-driven life. And so that's certainly something I try to encourage people, is the idea of, you have so many go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there's so many people who, you know, who could possibly be working a job which fulfills them in a way that, is absolutely wonderful, but they're either caught up in false narratives or they're chasing, materialism, things that don't really fulfill them in that way. For a lot of people also, it's the fact that they don't even know, they're lost. And I think a lot of that has to do with the education system, and the way it's designed, because it doesn't allow for people to experiment. It doesn't, it's a very structured in a way where everything's compartmentalized. Nothing is really harmonious. So I'll give you an example, like with for instance, having problems to solve. Like, hey, here we go. We're going to have to, we're in a mechanic class or something like that. And our project is to build a car or something like that, to build the outside of a car or something like that, where everyone's now working together. You got teamwork, and plus you're learning about what it takes to become a mechanic. So you've already built some underlying knowledge there to know, hey, this might be my passion. So it's something that I feel like can be discovered early on in life, but we just don't have the opportunities. We don't have the
Avenues.
the avenues, the experiences, stuff like that, where we could start sampling different parts about life and see what drives us. Maybe, maybe for some people it's working with tools. Maybe for other people it's more the analytical stuff. Maybe for other people it's working with people,
Right.
but when you come out of high school, you don't have any of that experience, and you're just like, oh, okay, now it's time to go to college. What do I want to do?
Right. And that there is one version of what you're talking about. It's Montessori school. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
go to Montessori, but I did become aware of it in like my 20s, hearing about it for the first time. It's like, wow, that sounds pretty awesome. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of trying to develop the interests of the kids. And if some go in that way, but some go over here, then that's okay. And help nurture that learning environment. So yeah. And the thing is, Mike, so many of the classes like wood shop and auto shop and culinary, all of these things that were pretty much the basic at a lot of high schools in this country, those programs have fizzled out even just in the last 10 years. It's been a slow and steady type of fizzle, but just really even in the last like 10, 15 years, you can just see it. It's not at the schools. The opportunities, those opportunities aren't there. And what that inevitably does is it gets a kid into the mindset of, well, I have to go to college. I don't know that I can go become an AC mechanic. I have a lot of students who I tell them, you live in one of the hottest places on this planet. Truly, it is hot. And forever, there will be people whose AC units break. Why not go? Why not get with a couple? You got no direction, you got no interest. Why not get with a couple of buddies, go to that electric school, go to that AC mechanic school, learn for a year, start making the money, develop the skill for 5 years, make a business together, but that's nothing I was thinking about when I was 16 or 17, and shouldn't even say that I was thinking about it. I didn't even know it existed. I did not even know it existed. I didn't know, like a lot of my students don't know, you can turn 18 and become a real estate agent. You can turn 18 and start doing sales. You can turn 18 and start working in some areas that perhaps you didn't know about that don't require that college education. Now, I'm not saying that nobody should go to college. Not at all what I'm saying. But the reality is that those practical things are not practical anymore because people don't know about them. And who specifically? The kids. And where does that stem from? Their education environment. So if 20 years ago, the average high school had wood shop, had welding shop, had culinary school, had the auto mechanic shop, if all of them had that, then those things should still be here because they're things that we all still use.
And that's one of the things where I think, school has really, I'll just say, yeah, public education and has failed the students, because these things that they need to explore, right? So for in order for a child to learn and to grow, they need the freedom, they need the options to explore. And if that's not there and all they're doing is sat in front of a teacher and told to memorize stuff, I mean, that doesn't inspire people to search for the best version of themselves by exploring. And then you add on top of that all the standardized tests and the whole purpose of school, it seems like from my perspective, from the outside in, I'm looking, is that it's to get those grades. Is all about, it's all grade focused, it's all score focused, it's all test focused. And so that is where the reward comes from. It doesn't come from working on a project and building something that like
an accomplishment, a success.
Yeah, an accomplishment or a success. It comes from pleasing the teacher with good grades or pleasing the system with good grades. And I feel like that takes a lot of the creativity out of the students, and
it does. Yeah, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Well, I just want to lead into that and say, and so when you come out, right, of the school environment, and this is speaking from a firsthand account, I was lost. And I was like, okay, well, what is it that I want to do? What's going to be my passion? And this is also where your book comes into handy, because it says, hey, go out there, experiment, see what feels right, follow your intuition, and just lean into it, go for it. And
trust it.
Yeah, trust it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Also, get involved, join the community, see if you really actually like it. Get out of your comfort zone, talk to people, start getting involved as much as you can. If that's something that you feel is worth pursuing. I know you kind of gave an example in the book. I can't remember it exactly, but it was basically somebody's trying something out, realizing, hey, that's not for them, and then trying out something else and being like, oh, okay, this fits more my personality. But you got to give yourself that time to explore. Again, something I think that we should be doing in middle school, elementary, high school. But unfortunately, people are coming out later in life trying to figure out what it is that they got to do. Right. Still, so many people still afraid to take risks. So many people still afraid to look silly. So many people, afraid of that stigma. and end up just working these jobs which don't give them that fulfillment because that purpose and who they are as a person aren't aligned,
That passion. Yeah.
that passion. Yeah.
Yeah. And think of it, take that. Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. And then take it to the next step and go, okay, the kids who again are being conditioned to be the most similar that of kids that have ever existed, right? Hive mind for them. I have to TikTok because everyone else is and do everything just like that, right? That is like the motto. So when that's happening and that is shaping and working their brain and really truly creating their environment and their entire perspective, where's the room for something like the entrepreneurship that you're suggesting? Forget about the fact that the programs don't exist. The child in their private life outside of school is not encouraged to explore because they are glued in. Now, again, I hate to sound like a hypocrite because we all have our issues with dealing with and finding poise with the smartphone use. But again, who's to say the intention was to ever have a 15-year-old on one of these to begin with, let alone with all of the extra things that they're participating in. And so when you think about creativity, it's like, what time do they have to find creativity when they're being like everybody else?
Wow. That's actually scary right now because I mean, I don't mean to get away from your book, but yeah, there is an entire generation right now just completely being, for lack of a better word, brainwashed in a way by these social media apps, by being on the phone. I see it, man. They are addicted to it. And I know they're addicted to it because I've gotten caught in that trap as well. And so if I've gotten caught in that trap as an adult who has been able to, grow and, who can get past some of these psychological traps that, these apps are built with,
as admitted by the creators of them.
Yeah. Who has a little bit more willpower. I can't imagine these kids who get trapped by them. And it's probably so hard to escape that. And so that time that they should be developing themselves, right, is spent on social media, searching for the dopamine hits from likes that come from conformity. And that's scary because, I just don't know what kind of future that leads to with these kids on a personal level, because you're going to have a lot of people out there who don't have meaning and purpose in their lives and are searching for some type of fulfillment. And and it's just not there. They don't have the skills or the ability to actually even pursue their purpose or meaning, because, so much of what they learned in school isn't, they're not equipped for the real world. So, and so what do you have? You have a lot of people then coming out, young adolescents on antidepressants, anxiety disorders and stuff like that, incapable of handling any conflict or any stress in the world because they've never even had to go through that as they're going through school. And so it's just so yes.
Here's a way when, 50 years ago or when my grandpa was a kid, there was first place, right? There was first place. Then eventually when I'm a kid, there was first and second and third. So this guy and this guy get to feel special. And now it is 1 through 10. How many you got in the room? 10,000? All right. It's 1 through 10,000.
Do you see that actually happening in your school? Is there like really something, is it gotten that bad? I know in some schools there are, but
no, not in a formal acknowledgement sense. No, I just mean, generally speaking, that mindset that I just articulated is interwoven into their expectations. So when I say that, I don't mean that it is a direct thing, even that they're seeing at public school, outside of the fact that they are able to just think in their worlds that they can and will get whatever they want. And I don't mean I come from a wealthy family and you don't. I don't mean it like that. I mean I'm special, I'm entitled, hear my voice, right? I brought up in the book.
Very self-absorbed, huh?
The most self-absorbed. Again, it's not their fault. They have been allowed to participate in these things that have created them into this way. But it's like, I mentioned in the book, the idea of the smartphone and story mode specifically. The idea of story mode on something like Snapchat and Instagram creates this idea that I am TMZ. I've got my own TMZ at all times of the day, even if I'm doing something that no one and their brother cares about. I get to feel like they do, because later on in the night, I'm gonna go, ooh, 97 scene, right? Look how sweet, look how dope this is. 97 people saw that. I hope someone laughed, right? Now, I sound a little cynical with it, but I'm just being kind of honest. That story mode suddenly allows us to be TMZ. And I'm speaking from adults, I'm speaking from
Mm-hmm.
all of my friends. Then you go, what's happening with the kids with that? Imagine that level of entitlement indirectly. They don't realize it's happening to them. It's not their fault. They
Mm-hmm.
are the product. So they're the guinea pigs, so to speak, to this product that is affecting kids in a way that the average person, I don't think, really has a full understanding of. But simultaneously, it's like, if I'm going to talk about something like this with my students, I started off with, guys, first off, it's not your fault. And secondly, it started with people my age. I came from Facebook, where suddenly the beginning increments of people not caring about their privacy, about caring about keeping things to themselves, or keeping certain things private, right? I tell them, I go, it started with us. I said, but what's happening to you guys is on a whole other level. And it's happening to them. But again, you see adults through the age of 50
The kids acknowledge
participating.
it.
Some, absolutely. No matter what, there's always going to be, all right, shut up, old man. That kind of mindset. I could have been sitting in a seat back in 2002 and thought that from some adult saying something that I took as, oh, choose my own proper perspective. Okay, whatever you say. Right. So it's not that off that you would have some kids that buy in, and some kids that don't. But there are absolutely those that pause it for a second and they go, man, oh man, that is a lot of energy, right? There's always just the pie chart of energy that you have in a day. How much of that is the average adult, is the average kid putting into something other than something in this physical realm? How much of that is going into the invisible world of themselves? And it's an alarming amount.
You know what you said there too before all of this, where the adults are kind of reinforcing it as well, and that's a tragic part as well because, I feel like they're failing their children in a large way as well because, you know, you would think that adults would know better and therefore try to, you know, guide their sons and daughters in the right direction. But I feel for a lot of people that they're just taking the easy way out, because it's so convenient just to give your child the phone or let them do what they want.
100%. I'll give you one word that's the reason for that, and it's called Facebook. When
Mm-hmm.
adults, when I was about 18 and I started seeing people in their 40s getting onto Facebook, I was at that age, I was just like, hold up a second. No, you're not going to get in. I was obsessed with Facebook back then. I haven't had it now since probably 2014. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I loved it. And so when I started seeing people 2, 3 times my age getting on it, I was like, how is this going to turn out? And then we all saw how it turned out. It became the phone at the dinner table. It became having an infant in a crib who can barely hold a phone, taking a picture of mom or dad. And we entered very quickly into this world of parents becoming as self-obsessed as their kids. So and it goes into the education realm too. It drives me nuts that there are absolutely um, people and institutions overall, just kind of this unspoken thing where adults who should know better want to avoid acknowledging how much their own social media controls them, and then in doing so acknowledging how wicked it could then be for kids who are a fourth or a third or a half of their age, right? How could you objectively recognize that it's not good for you, no matter how much? Oh, but I've got my friend in Nantucket, and how is he ever going to see? I message him the picture, right? You don't have to have the face. There's 1,000 other ways that you can communicate, right? But in that moment, that Facebook and that adulthood suddenly not seeing their kid because they themselves are scrolling on their feed,
So they
that was
got
the
trapped.
beginning. They got trapped too. And how could you objectively tell your kid that they're trapped when you yourself are? So things
Yeah.
like anxiety and the depression and all the things that these kids deal with, guess what? Nobody ever talks about. They never talk about their social media use. It might come up in a video. Might come up in a thing of, look how much time we spent. But no one
Mm-hmm.
wants to have this uncomfortable conversation of how much of your ego is being stroked from using these things, and then is perpetuating these really, really bad habits that create a toxicity in your life that strays further away from personal wellness than anything that's ever been available to humans,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's the social media is really like I don't know how we're going to get out of that trap because I just see it getting progressively worse. And like you said, these people are in lab coats and and like they have their laboratories and they're running psychological experiments, figuring out how to get you to open that app as many times as they can throughout the day. And it's wild. Even for myself, I'm having to put restrictions on me. And I'm well aware of the games and the tricks that are played in the background to get me on that phone. And still they catch me in their traps. And so, what does the average kid growing up in this environment have? They don't have many chances to escape that. So it's going to be an
No.
interesting world we're moving in. But look, I want, go ahead.
So I was just going to make one comment on that. What that does is it creates something for those kids and for these adults where they don't feel like any kind of balance is available. They don't feel
Mhm.
like poise. Well, it's one of the
Mhm.
wellness principles. They don't feel like poise is possible because they can't even begin to start prioritizing things in the direction that would enable them to become a little better, a little
Mhm.
happier, positioning themselves for whatever it might be that they need to just be doing a little bit better. It's like, when you feel like you're being bogged down from all these things, where do you stop and find the ability to develop poise and balance? It's very, very hard. So again, it's like the person has to recognize, the reader has to recognize you have so many things going against your wellness.
Mhm.
And it's nothing political. There's not a side to it. It's the fact that there are a lot of things that are meant for your consumption. And through that consumption, something negative is happening to your personal wellness. That's the easiest way to say it, right? It doesn't have to be politicized. It doesn't have to be painted any type of way. You have to acknowledge that as a person living in the 21st century, advertisements, consumption of entertainment is not what it was 60 years ago. And so you have to be aware of the fact that you are a constant product. And that product is going to try to make you as self-obsessed as possible. And through that self-obsession, guess what? You're going to find your anxiousness. You're going to find your depression. You're going to find those things that are really tearing people apart today because they simply don't know any better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's uh it's going to be interesting how we come out of it. Like what I'm seeing on the horizon is I am like, even this conversation is kind of evidence of it, but people are kind of starting to wake up out of it. At least, the first wave of parents, I would imagine, are starting to come out and think, looking for alternatives to the phone, alternatives to, it's gonna, the tablet, the phone is going to be part of our lives probably forever, right? It's a tool that is, just beyond imaginable useful. It's just the other parts about it that keep you addicted to it, is
Subdued.
subdued, yeah, are the parts that we're going to have to navigate and have to conquer as human beings. Otherwise, it's
Right.
like a fly in a fly trap, just buzzing around. That's going to be many humans if we don't figure that part out.
Right.
But let's get to I do want to talk about, there's another aspect to, following your passion, which kind of in a way is like following your heart, like, but you do give some caveat there. And that's one of the things that I did appreciate, because so many times people can get caught up in following their heart, and their heart leading them the wrong way because they haven't really thought things through. Like a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but there might be an example. I'll give you an example of someone who, might think that they want to be a guitarist in a rock band, right? But they haven't really thought it through. And so they start pursuing this, not knowing that they're going in the wrong direction. When if they just gave it a little bit of thought and said, okay, for what is it going to take for me to achieve this? All right, well, I'm going to have to practice 16 hours a day. I'm going to have to find a crew. I'm going to have to probably, play at some shows that are empty. I'm going to have to start from the ground up, and then when I make it, I have to be touring. And when I tour, well, I'm going to have to give up a family, at least till I'm later on in life, because I'm not going to be there for them in the way that I want to be there for them. Like all these, playing this out, going through the process of what it takes to be, to follow your passion. I
Right.
think I think that's very important because, as there's certain things, life is not just, it's multifaceted, right? It's just not one dimensional. And so you're just going to have to make sure that this road leads in a direction that fulfills all other, all other
Aspects.
aspects of your life that you want to be fulfilled.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it there's something to be said for someone who goes after their passion, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to mean an immediate, complete earth-shattering shift, right? It
Mm-hmm.
just means putting in the incremental steps. And that alone is, I speak from my own experience of things I'm trying to develop in my own personal realm of work. You know, you'll often again come into the realization you are your own worst enemy. And
Mm-hmm.
so those ideas of, oh, these expectations, I got to get to that over there, we forget, yeah, but before you get to that finish line, you got to take a step, each step. And so those steps are those incremental things that you can do to start really moving towards that passion. And whether that means that it becomes your job, or whether that means it becomes something that you share with other people, without a profit, whatever it might be, like, passion is, you have to have it. And if you don't have it, then you're missing some experiences. And it means perhaps you get up and you put yourself in an uncomfortable spot. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
go, maybe you go roll in a jujitsu class. Maybe you go have a ballet lesson. Maybe you hop on a plane and fly to somewhere where they don't speak your native tongue. Whatever it might be, when you find, I think, again, this is just my opinion, but when you find yourself in that spot where passion is at a lull, or where it's never even really shown itself, then you got to switch it up. You got to change your environment, right? You have to change your environment. There's so much that we have control of, so much that we don't have control of, right? Even if you have to change your environment, that includes a financial aspect of your decision making. Well, then continue what it is you have to deal with until you position yourself to financially get out of that, right? Whatever it might be. You mentioned there's all sorts of different roads. Nothing is certain. Yeah, it's the beautiful thing of choice, right? And so we can either make the choice to think that things are bigger and more difficult than they are to achieve, or we can again buy into the premise of, well, who says it's got to be one big leap? Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. Short-term goals, things that you can grab and go, yes, I got it. Now on to the next part of this.
So that's another aspect of finding your passion that that I think is important to talk about. Is sometimes success is the driver of passion, and so you might not know that you're passionate about something until you start actually getting some success in it. And so I think that's just another way of saying, hey, try a lot of things, and those things that you start finding success in, who knows, they might reveal themselves to you as an avenue to go down, and
Right.
so yeah.
Worlds and realms that you didn't even know perhaps existed or were options for you.
Yeah, for sure. Another, so I'm going to bring up a principle that I really was new to me. Actually, it was something that I learned, and that had to do with philanthropy. um
Mm.
Practice philanthropy, right?
Yes. Yes.
um Even the word philanthropy was something that I didn't know. I didn't have the proper definition. I always associated it with money, and it's just something that billionaires did, but it's actually something that anyone can do. And it's something that anyone can do all day, every day, kind of thing, like that. And really, the word, what it actually just means is love, like mankind, be have benevolence toward the whole human family, universal goodwill, a desire and readiness to do good to all men, right? And these are random acts of kindness that can be philanthropy, or it could be monetary. It's just basically showing goodwill. And I think that's something that once you change that perspective, that philanthropy doesn't just have to be a monetary deed, that it could just be something which we practice throughout the day.
Yeah.
It changes that. Once you change that perspective, I think that you can start to see yourself practicing more philanthropy. And
Yes.
then once you practice more philanthropy, it it kind of radiates,
Oh yeah. It becomes a
and
lifestyle and other people take notice.
for sure. And I'm sure that has so many positive effects in so many different areas of your lives, just because innately as human beings, I think naturally that we want to cooperate socially and we want to do good to others. I think it's just something that we find pleasure. There's probably a small percentage of psychopaths and sociopaths that take pleasure from pain in which other human beings receive, but for the most part our species likes to do good and
Yeah.
they feel good about it.
Yeah, 100%, man. I actually got chills when you're saying that, because when you do buy into that idea of being philanthropic, whether with its time or energy, or whether with its money, like, I don't know, man, quality of life for yourself just gets better. Like,
Hmm.
it just gets better. And, there's that great book, Ishmael, one of my all-time favorites. I just picked it up for the first time in my life. I wish I would have picked it up when I was 14. But
Hmm.
there's the givers and there's the takers, right? And all of us take. It's natural part of living in this life. We have to take. It's a part of it. But we don't have to give. Giving back is a choice. You got to take. If you want to be alive next week, you got to take something. Paying for it and doing the proper things, of course, not robbing people by taking, but you're a taker. You have to survive. Giving is a choice. And when you start to choose to give, again, it doesn't have to be $100. It can be time, energy, soup kitchen, $1 to the guy on the corner that looks less fortunate than you, whatever it might be.
Smile.
Smile for other people, hold the door for somebody, compliment somebody on something that they have done and changed, like make somebody else's day.
Hmm.
That's like one of the, I've got to tell you, like, that's one of the greatest parts to being a teacher, is
Hmm.
to having 150 students, each new students each year, and then 150 that are juniors and 150 more that are seniors that you taught, and to be able to have 450 kids that you have the opportunity, when you see them in the day, to call them by name, to make them feel good about themselves, to just say hello, to acknowledge them, right? And when you take that premise to the adult world, man, we're all dealing with it. We're all dealing with it. But if people got into that mindset of paying it forward and giving as much as they can when they can, it looks different for everybody. But I know for a fact that when I just go finish buying a large pizza that I had to pay with cash at the mom and pop shop up the street, and I got that leftover dollar on my seat, I can afford to give it to the guy on the corner who's not bothering, not loitering, he's just sitting there, right? Or we have an opportunity when we go through a drive-through and you're at Chick-fil-A and you see a couple of homeless people in the corner over there, you have the opportunity to say, okay, I could spend another $5 real quick and get each of them a sandwich, maybe $8. It's Chick-fil-A, a little more expensive. So yeah, I got $8 to get them two more sandwiches and a fry, and maybe that can hold over their nutrition for the next day, or their calories. You're right; it's going to hold over their energy. So,
Hmm.
or I don't have money to give. I'm not even in a position to go to Chick-fil-A right now because money's so tight, because I'm trying to be frugal in order to get to this other destination I have. Well, guess what you can still do? You can still treat people well. You can still dedicate your time to some kind of a cause, right? I've got a buddy of mine from college who, for a while, I'm not sure if he's still doing it, but he was volunteering at a soup kitchen, right? At a church. I had a lot of respect for him for that, because the reality is that there's nothing you're getting back from it in the form of a material, right? That's philanthropy. It's this idea of, I'm giving something, whether it's money, energy, or time, or all three, but I'm giving something, and the only stuff that I can get back is intrinsic, is the subliminal feelings that you get from helping someone else. That's what it's all about. So yeah, and it's so funny you introduced it with saying, like, you always grow up thinking it's billionaires, and that's what I wrote in the book. I said something to the extent of, it's not all $500 a plate evenings with
Hmm.
fine dining and all this other stuff to give to some it's not, doesn't have to be that. If every person took that attitude of give a little bit more than you take into their daily lives, the entire world overnight would be different,
For
literally.
sure.
That's
Yes.
a fact. And the other funny thing with this is that when people want to argue about all of the different prophets of all the different faiths, from the big four, the big five, to the big 5,000, all the different belief systems that are out there, the main thing that you find across all of them is people talking about give more than you take. If you give more than you take, you're going to find this thing that exists that puts your human body, your human experience, into a position to thrive. Because when you're giving yourself, you're understanding you're a part of this whole thing, right? That ties into something that we all make a very bad mistake of, thinking that all this is for me. Oh, it's all here for me. You're a part of it. We're
Hmm.
all a part of it. And when you acknowledge it like that, and you acknowledge the idea of, again, I don't have to give $500, but I could give 5 minutes. I don't have to give $500, but I could give a Saturday morning, whatever it might be. It's so important to believe that can be life changing, not just for the person that you're giving it to, but for you. That's the thing that people don't realize. They just go, oh yeah, it's $5, or it's a half hour. It's like, no, 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 no. You're serving a purpose that's bigger than you. And because of that, things are happening in your brain and you're recognizing things that you otherwise would not have ever noted.
For sure, for sure. I think that's a really good place to leave that part off because uh yeah, it's just it reigns true for sure. Um let's talk about one of the things that I'm going through right now. And I've gone through it in the past. It's every time you want to move ahead in life, it's paying the price. Right. And the way I read into that, it's doing the work. It's, those impediments that are in front of you. It's like you got to take those challenges on head on and go through the challenges to get to where you want to go. Um, you know, what I guess speak on that a little bit, that principle on pay the price.
Yeah, pay the price is aside from the perspective topic. I think paying the price is probably one of my second or third favorite parts of the book, and it's this premise that again, we're not special until we are, right? We're not anything until we create what it is that we are looking for, what we're looking to be. That process, that entire process requires a person to pay the price, right? Whether it's finishing that building project, whether it's finally publishing my book, whether it's accumulating a new ranking in one's profession, whatever it might be, paying the price is always going to be a part of it. If you don't put out that energy, you're never going to get it back. And that energy that you have to exert to get whatever it might be is not always going to work, right? All the intention in the world, you could have all the intention in the world of have this energy going here, but it might go over there. And when that happens, that is paying the price. That's having a giant bump in the road where suddenly you got to get out and change the tire. And then you keep going. You got another 1,000 miles and things are going well. And you're like, oh, we're 10 miles away. But then you get sideswiped. And now you got to stay in a hotel for the night and the car's getting worked on, right? It's you're not there until you're there. And I think this is, again, something that is conditioned, maybe not as much through school, but something through just children's TV shows and whatever else. And, there's an encouragement to just think that the destination is right there. And that's not true.
It's reinforced. It's reinforced. I know growing up for me, everything was instant gratification. So, or a big part of it. I think that's only gotten more so. Things might change here in the next 5 to 10 years, but that's a big part of when you get older, when you get out of high school, get out of college. I mean, I know there's people that go all the way up to 24, 25, 26 without ever having a job. And so they get out and they think that the world owes them something because they got a college degree or something like that. And they've never actually put in the work. And so, right. And so I think, that's just one of those things where, people need to really develop that perspective that they need to, life isn't just that easy. Right. And there's for the things that actually are valuable and are actually meaningful, you're going to have to work towards that. And you're gonna have to show up every day. You have to, you're gonna have to figure out what the price of success is, and then you're gonna have to pay it.
Yeah. And you're gonna have to deal with the fallouts, you're gonna have to deal with the stresses, you're gonna have to deal with the pains. But the entire time, if we're using our perspective, right, you're keeping in mind, I'm doing this because I have that place over there to get to. I have that goal to get to. And I think that premise of instant gratification is a fact. It's something I can't believe hasn't even come up until this point in our conversation. But yeah, the instant gratification is essentially what price? What pay a price? What are you talking about?
I got to sacrifice.
I got to get a cut along the way. I'm going to get a boo-boo. What you talking about? And it really is. There's people that recognize that it's that is a part of life. And there's people who just don't. And for some people that don't, it's almost as if either, like you said, they've never been in a position to have to be put into a vulnerable spot, like taking a job when you're 14 or 15 or whatever it might be. But then there's others who also have taken those hits forever. I'm not that getting a job at 15 is a hit, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's something that you've had to deal with in adversity while you're doing this, you're balancing school and your after school sports and all this type of stuff. There's people who did that for the entirety and they did it well, but they still didn't have a place that they were going. And that's the most unfortunate part. How many people are paying the price of their time and energy, but they don't have this place in mind of where they're getting to, right?
Because they don't know where they want to go,
They don't know
right?
it exists, right? They don't know it exists. And so when you when you develop all these type of tools that we're talking about, these wellness tools in the book, you're talking about being in a position to have a better idea of knowing what it is that you want, and trusting this idea that it's going to take work, it's going to take time, it's going to take perspective, but if I pay the price, if I have the right intent, then there's a very good chance I can turn the corner on this, and I can create it, I can succeed in it, I can accomplish it, I can attain it, whatever it might be.
Yep, for sure. Is there anything about the book, any other principles or anything else that you want to mention that you want to go over?
I think those. I mean, we'd end up talking for 10 hours if I went one by one.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but
I wanted to make sure that we got to the most important uh parts of the book that you really wanted to talk about, because yeah, these are all, I mean, this is just practical advice that everyone is going to, everyone knows. A lot of this is also, we know it, we just need to be reminded of it. And I think that this book does a good job of doing that. And so
thank you.
yeah, um yeah,
Yeah,
just
I
want
will.
to.
I will say one thing. Um, with the idea of possessing confidence, right? That's a part of the book is possessing confidence,
Hmm.
and part of that confidence is being okay with knowing when to stop arguing with someone, right?
Hmm.
And the only reason I wanted to bring this one up is because it's more relevant than it's ever been, not only with social media and whatever else, but take into addition other things that are happening around the world. And you can imagine that people more than ever are willing to argue until they're blue in the face.
Hmm.
And we all have to remember that you don't have to be right. As long as you're right in your mind within the values that you have that you live by, then that should be all that matters. We don't have to get the last word in. Now you can, right? We can. But if you're truly confident, then you'll trust that value system. You'll go, am I in line with these? Am I acting out of the right intention? All right, then what am I busy wasting my time now arguing my point to someone that doesn't want it anymore? And we all are guilty of this, not just in we're guilty of this in so many different aspects of life where we just argue. People find themselves arguing and arguing, arguing. I got to get the last word. I got to get the last word. And it's like, no, man. Again, there's the pie chart of peace. We only have so much energy. How much we give to arguing over things that are just so menial, or maybe perhaps they're really really important and they're profoundly huge. But at the same time, if you've done what you've done within the values of what you believe in, and you've said your piece, and the person's not having it, well, then be okay. Find the confidence to say, okay.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a point where now more than ever it's like appropriate, but so man, I kind of lost my train of thought. I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying, but
Oh.
I totally drew a blank. Um, but yeah, when there's also some stuff about confidence where it just sounds a lot easier said than actually done. There's a lot to possessing confidence that comes from experience.
Mhm.
Again, and that involves you getting out of your comfort zone and trying things, and then being okay with failure.
Yes.
Maybe adopting a mindset that says, "Hey, no matter what, things are going to be okay." That's another avenue that I took to develop my confidence. It was just a tool. It's a stoic tool as well. It's like, hey, no matter what happens, whatever the outcome is, you're gonna life is gonna continue. Things are gonna
Right.
go on. So, and once you approach things with that kind of attitude, it really takes a lot of the pressure um, off you to, be your best. And
Mm.
maybe there was a lot of, maybe there was things that held you back, maybe imposter syndrome, or maybe it was just the idea of failure itself. And then once you develop that mindset, hey, no matter what, everything's going to be okay. So let me just go for it, because regardless, even if I make a fool out of myself, or if I fail, I wake up in the morning, it's going to be fine.
All
And
good.
yeah. And so that's another tool to
Right.
for confidence, that I thought of when I was reading that. Kind of breaking up there. Hello?
Yeah. 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 I lost you for just a second. Hello.
Looks like,
Hello. Check, check.
can you hear me?
I can see you. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we just got a
Hold
good
up. I
connection there.
think it's, is it, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you see me?
I can see you as well.
Oh, okay. So we're good. All right, cool. My bad. I didn't realize we were live again. Um, uh, what was you
Confidence.
saying before that cut out? I apologize. Right. Comment. So, um, yeah, it's a matter of small small steps. Right? We were just talking about small steps. Like, how many people are encouraged to think of confidence in the idea of accomplishing personal goals completely unrelated to everybody else, right? Like our version of confidence that we're constructed to believe in from spoon-fed cable TV and whatever else is basically the idea of, the I won't even get in. We all have that construct. I'm not even going to put it into someone's mind. We all have that construct of what that looks like. But the reality is, confidence is doing things for yourself and accomplishing things for yourself, like setting
Hmm.
small goals, like putting yourself, like you said, in vulnerable positions, like buying into the idea that even if you have zero interest in any kind of physical performance, that you should still exercise because you know that it's going to make you feel better, and in the process, it's going to make you a more confident person. The idea and topic of confidence is so similar to all these things, where it's almost like a checklist. And if you're staying true to that checklist, your confidence should increase as that time goes on.
I have
And
that. I have that here in my notes, real quick. That just one of the foundation to confidence is exercise and working out. Um, at least that's in my experience. You use that as a foundation, and like you'll see other areas just you know fit. So.
yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, there's something to be said about buying. I say it all the time, but buying into this idea that, man, oh man, wouldn't it be something if I could do something with this in the time that I got it? And wouldn't it be
Mhm.
something if I could get myself, whether you got a frame of a 6'8" giant, or someone who's 6'2", or someone who's 5'8", or someone who's 5'1", all of those people, all of those scenarios, all of those individual unique perspectives that those people are living through, each person has the ability to try to become a machine. Each person has the ability to go, you know what? This body has a lot to do with my life, how I feel, how I act, my perception, my opinion of myself. Wouldn't it be something if, with the time that I have, with the energy that I have, and each person's scenario is different. But boy, wouldn't it be something if I did my best to physically feel well and to physically look my best? Because my oh my, what would that do for my brain? And in doing so, what would that do for my confidence? It's going to put it through the roof.
That's right.
And it has nothing to do with toxic masculinity or anything of that nature. It has everything to do with the idea of men and women today. Everybody is taking charge with fitness, taking charge in this physical part of their life. I will say, I think that, again, because of social media, it can end up being used way, but more so it's used in the best way. There's people that share information. There's people from everyday folks just at the gym working out who might share something that they're doing where you go, oh man, I've never seen that. I never thought of that. Or it's a version of a doctor or a trainer who has a public profile on Instagram who shares their work with people, right? That's an example of it being used in a really, really great way. And being used in a way where you can see other people doing stuff, even sometimes in the privacy of their home, right? The last year has shown a lot of people, boy, that gym, I haven't been there in a while, and well, if I don't go to the gym, there's nothing for me to do. Well, there's about 1,000 people online that would tell you otherwise, who are super healthy and super shredded and have that physique, whether they're men or women, that everybody wants. And so again, the excuses become less and less available. And so when you trust yourself and you trust that idea of your time and energy being put into something like your physical well-being is one of the most important things you could possibly do, yeah, it inevitably is going to make your confidence feel better, whether it's from physically looking better or whether it's from physiologically feeling better. It all is going to make confidence flourish in a way that otherwise it wouldn't.
Cool. John, man, this was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking about your book and going over these principles, because even it's even a good reminder for myself. Again, like we can always there's always things that we can improve on, tweak on, be better at. And yeah, so it was a great conversation, great reminder. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Have been looking forward to this, and yeah, it was a fantastic conversation. And those little reminders are necessary for literally every single person. It's not there's no end date. It's a life practice. It's a life practice of believing that I can always get better in some way or another. So I appreciate you having me on and allowing me the time and the opportunity to share my vision with people.
Real quick, I think you might have mentioned the name of your book.
I was about to plug it. The Personal Wellness Principles, Simple Steps to Create a Happy, Healthy, and Fulfilling Life, available on Amazon in both paperback and ebook. Best place to find me at would be on Instagram at jbroswellness, JBROSWELLNESS. And again, the name of the book, The Personal Wellness Principles, Simple Steps to Create a Happy, Healthy, Fulfilling Life.
Dope, man. All right. Well, you have a good day, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much, man. Be well.
All right. Peace.